Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome aboard the Max Afterburner podcast, sponsored, powered, brought to you by the No Fallen Heroes universe. Folks, we have an incredibly special guest today. I'm really fired up about this. Even though I think I reached my quota of Tomcat guys, now I got a Tomcat gal, which is awesome. So we're just going to dig right into this. Dr. Kristin Rosie Barnes. Welcome, Doc. Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
It's been a long time coming, folks. This is, I'm about to introduce a severe underachiever. This young lady flew the Tomcat for, well, actually, I'm going to let you brief most of your Navy stuff, but folks, I think 7 deployments that she'll talk about. And if you don't know what the F-14 Tomcat is, badass, even though as a Hornet guy, I'll give him a little bit of credit. F-14 Tomcat from the original movie, Top Gun, air defense, fleet air defense, air superiority. Couldn't dogfight or shit, but that's a separate conversation. And then she got bored with flying fighters for the United States Navy and decided to become a doctor. So if you think you're an underachiever, meet this young lady here. So Doc, call sign Rosie. Kristin, give us your executive summary of the Navy, because I don't want to miss anything.
So I grew up in a large family, and a time when parents said, if you aren't paying rent at the age of 18, we're kicking you out. So I knew from a very early age that my parents weren't going to be able to pay for my college. Mm-hmm. I was going to have to fend for myself. And I knew from the age of maybe 12 that I was probably going to be in the service. Mm-hmm. My oldest brother went in the Army. My second older brother was a submariner. And did ROTC. And so when I started applying to colleges, I knew that I had to find a way to get the service to pay for it somehow. So I applied. Funny, Air Force and West Point didn't want me, but the Naval Academy said, sure, we'll take you. So I ended up going to the Naval Academy. And I didn't want to be a ship driver. That just didn't seem exciting enough. So they had this thing called NFO. You know, we joke about it. NFO means no future on the outside. But
I think you proved that wrong.
Right. Yeah. And a naval flight officer, which means aircrew, essentially. And so I ended up being a backseater in the F-14. And interestingly, as I was going through my career, starting with flight school, the social and political landscape of how women were integrated into the service was changing massively. Mm-hmm.
What year group were you? When did you get commissioned?
92.
92. Okay, I'm 91. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and tailhook happened the year before I graduated, and so that paved the way for the repeal of the women in combat exclusion law. And then the week I was selecting aircraft, you know how it goes week to week. They have different needs. Some guys go helicopters, some guys go jets or P3s. And the week I was selecting from VT-86, which was the no future on the outside school. They needed F-14 Rios. And it was just like, it's so bizarre that 4 of the 6 slots, it was so unusual. Everybody was commenting. So I got one of those slots. It was just like, wow, karma or kismet or, fate. I don't pick a word. And because I am a tiny person, despite my large attitude, I had to go from Pensacola. They gave me a special flight to get up to Virginia Beach to sit in the aircraft to make sure that I could touch all the controls. Mm-hmm. So they gave me a waiver. I got a waiver right from the beginning to fit into that aircraft. And, the rest is history. I ended up flying F-14s until they closed the doors on those. Yeah. Was in the F-31 and along with the F-213 for the last cruise of the Tomcat. In
Black 2006. Lions.
Yep. And because I was passed over for command, which is a bummer, but opened up the door for many, many other things. I ended up doing other things for the rest of my career, which was really cool. But I certainly paved the way for the beginning of my life and all the contacts that I've made, especially in the world of psychedelics, which is just bizarre. Like it's all my aviation buddies. Like, how did that happen? Yep. But I'm still in contact with many of them. And there are some of the guys that put me in contact with you, Flake, and Sledge and some of those guys. So, but I've always had an interest in physical activity, endurance athletics. Like I started running marathons in college. I did my first Ironman in 2008, I think it was. And so this interest in health and fitness was something that is like coded into my DNA, and then performing under really intense environments. So how do you get an airplane for 9 hours and still function?
Yeah.
And so this deep interest in health, fitness, nutrition, sleep, biohacking or whatever for performance was important enough to me that when I retired in 2015, that I didn't want to just go work for Booz Hamilton or Boeing or some of these other places. I had to do something different. So I sat around for about a month, at which time I was going crazy.
I was going to say, that's a long time for you.
Yeah, it was crazy. I heard of this place called Bastyr University, which has 2 campuses, one in San Diego, one in Seattle. And I'd spent enough time in San Diego that I'm like, I don't want to go to San Diego. Let's try something different. And so I ended up out in Seattle, and I'm still out in this area, thank God. I became a naturopathic doctor, which is quite a bit different than a medical doctor, more in line with like DOs, osteopaths and chiropractors and that sort of thing. We have a great scope of practice out here. But so I got my education as a doctor and an acupuncturist. I'm a practitioner of Chinese medicine and herbal medicine. And of course, that is my segue into psychedelic medicine. It was that relationship with plant medicine that opened the door for me even to being open to doing something like psychedelics. But boy, am I glad I did, because man, my life would be different. Like it's been so life-changing.
Well, and it's interesting, you talked about, I got passed over command. As you and I both know, everything happens for a reason. That ended up being a blessing. Between us ladies here, I was put on the 04 list twice, and I got booted from the 04 list twice. So I actually had to 03 out for old Whiz reasons. But I thank God for that happening, because I would have went, after 9/11 happened, I would have been a reserve bum, full timer. I would have been miserable. So I remember at the time just being like so heartbroken. And then when I look in the rearview mirror, I'm like, you know what, God, thank you. What's that country song? Thank God for unanswered prayers. So I want to get right into it. So you and I both know there's medicine-isms. The medicine calls you. Give us how did the bat signal start appearing, and then how did you hear about, and I love the merch, the No Fallen Heroes Foundation, and how did the universe start changing? Inch us up to the medicine.
So I am open to alternative things. I don't think you become a naturopathic doctor and an acupuncturist without being open to alternative things. I do have a life that has been painted on the canvas of anxiety and depression. I was already suicidal when I was in college. My first experience with the military approach to mental health was when I went down to our brigade medical at the Naval Academy and told somebody that I was feeling suicidal. And I'll never forget it. She looked at me, some Navy captain, and said, I'm going to do you a favor. Don't tell anybody that you told me this. Go away and never mention it again. And I am not making this shit up.
My God.
It really happened. And so when you have an experience like that at the age of 19, where somebody that you like, captain, when you're is like, holy shit, you're God.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, that's my marching order. And I carried that out faithfully. I didn't enter talk therapy for the first time until I had been in the naturopathic program for 2 years.
Wow.
And I was 48. So
in the fleet,
years.
You're flying fighters, losing sisters, losing brothers, slamming on the boat, pulling G's, and you have to stuff all that stuff down. You compartmentalized it.
And then add to that, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, but I'm quite gay. And I was so closeted, I was closeted myself. So dealing with the stress and anxiety of this dysphoric life where you don't even know who you are when you look in the mirror. Yeah. And then when you finally realizing it, dealing with the shame and judgment that comes with that. Yeah. So, the chaotic childhood, the stress of being a woman in a really, really toxic, competitive environment, being gay in a straight world. Yeah. All these things really add up.
Yep. Well, even Even when we were in, the don't ask, don't tell started coming out, and the Navy started, or the military started getting a little better. But come on, as you and I both know, is lip service, right? The heavies would just kind of say it, and that wasn't the culture. Same thing with mental health. So the heavies can say one thing, and in the trenches, obviously, it's the exact opposite. So, yeah, I first of all, Doc, I salute you for all of that, man. And when I use the term badass, I'm not. That's a high compliment, man, because I don't know how you did it, but maybe that's what led to the medicine calling. Like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be carrying this all on my own. So talk us through that.
I think the answer is I didn't do it. I'm masked. I'm a master of masking. People do not know what's going on inside because that's how we get through the world. It's a coping mechanism.
Ego.
And there's some, right? Like, and I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be great. I wanted to be good at what I did.
Sure.
But there comes a time when it doesn't serve you anymore. And when you start hitting your 40s and 50s, you're like, this is not sustainable. Like, this isn't working for me anymore. Mm-hmm. I wasn't suicidal, but I was so anxious. It was hard for me to show up to work. And then I had this incident where I was riding my bike home, beautiful Saturday afternoon, 2:00 in the afternoon, and some asshole runs a stop sign, puts me right into the ER. So I ended up in Harborview in Seattle, with a collapsed lung, internal bleeding, 6 broken ribs, a fractured C7, and a completely separated left shoulder.
Oh my God.
And I'm lying there. Yeah, I'm lying there on my back. And I did exactly what you would expect somebody with our background to do. I'm in the ambulance on the phone going, hey, I'm okay.
Yeah. Like, it's fine. I'm fine.
I am not okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you dissociate. You get so used to compartmentalizing that there is a part of you that needs to still take care of other people while you're trying to take care of this internal implosion that's going on. So I called my girlfriend and I said, hey, I'm on my way to Harborview. And she lives over in the Olympic Peninsula, which is like a ferry ride and a long way away. So she drops everything and comes over to Seattle to see me along with one of my best friends from my program. And I'm sitting there with the 2 closest people in my life outside my own nuclear family. And it was a really good time for me to just stop and take stock and how I'm living my life and what I'm doing and the anxiety and the post-traumatic stress, which was very real and very different from all the other types of post-traumatic stress I had. Like, I still have trouble walking in front of a car without getting a little freaked out, right? Because the last thing I remember before that truck hit me was the giant grill that was in my face.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was incapacitating. I was having trouble working. I couldn't drive to work because I was like white knuckling it. I wasn't even getting on the highway and I was white knuckling it because I was always afraid that somebody was going to jump out. I was going to hit somebody.
Yeah.
And thank God a very close friend of mine was in town. In fact, he was in Port Townsend, where I live now, doing mushrooms for his own journey. Mm-hmm. Came over to where I was living to hang out with me and a couple of my friends for the afternoon. And he told us about his psilocybin journey. And I was like, okay, I need to find this medicine. So I found somebody locally that was working in the underground, and I contacted this person and we started chatting. And we decided that just based on my reticence because one of the biggest hangups with psychedelics is I don't want to lose control. I don't want to be out of control. Yeah. And because we have no basis of comparison of anything else that we've ever done in our lives, It's impossible to describe until you've actually experienced it and realize, okay, I'm not going to be out of control. So
well, you're a type A fighter, air crew. I mean, no out of control. I mean, we have to be in control.
Very much so. So she started me, the biggest favor anybody could have done for me. She did this really well. She started me on MDMA. And I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Sign me up.
And I signed me up. And when it first hit, it was scary because it is partially related to methamphetamine. It's a stimulant on one level. It's also the heart opener, which I'll get to in just a second. But as soon as the medicine hit me, I'm like, boom, I felt it, and my heart rate just jacked up, and I have this mini panic attack, and I look at her, my eyes get real big, and she's looking at me. It's just the medicine.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. Okay. Now I know why you need a sitter, because that person is there to bring you back down off the ceiling when you're starting to freak out. So after my initial experience with, oh my God, I'm going to die. and my parents are going to find out that I died doing
drugs.
Drug, right? After I got over that, I had the most amazing 4 hours where I was connected to pure consciousness. I had this great experience of looking at the earth, and she was breathing. I saw the inner core of the mantle as a heartbeat. It was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. And I think this was important. A lot of times when people are traumatized, they don't love themselves. They look in the mirror and they loathe what they see. And then they have trouble in relationships. And people like to say, well, you can't, nobody's going to love you until you love yourself.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck does that mean?
It's easier to say. It's easier to say. It's hard to execute. Right.
Well, MDMA did that for me in ways that are very, very difficult to describe. You almost have to experience it. And so now that they're using MDMA for PTSD and veterans, I'm so stoked because doing MDMA before I did anything else really paved the way for me to do the real work, because I got 4 hours of self-love and appreciating all the things that I have in my life that are going in the right direction. And so that was in December of 2022. And the way the universe works, I was hooked up with Sledge and you about the same time. And hey, this guy's doing a documentary and he wants to send women to Costa Rica. And I had just done this thing. And I'm like, yeah, if it's anything like that, send me to Costa Rica, I'll do that. Yeah. Not realizing, of course, what was in store for me. But we can get to Iboga in just a second. But that's how I got my start. And once I got, and the funny thing is, everybody's like, well, is it addictive? Well, no, it's not addictive. But once you do it, it's not like you want to do it again. It's like everything else that you do after that becomes more meaningful and important. So I wanted to maintain some sort of relationship with that type of medicine. Yeah. Well, I'm still working with the other medicines that I'm a part of, plant medicine, nutrition,
exercise,
acupuncture, exercise, all those things. And then I did Iboga.
and then came Iboga. So let's get in that.
My gosh.
Yeah. So I'm glad you said that, because it's really interesting, people's path to the medicine. You're like, hey, I'm so thankful I did MDMA first, because it kind of allowed me to put the mask on me first. And then, this is going to be good, because I want you to kind of contrast MDMA and then Iboga. And then I think maybe we'll have some time to follow up with some psilocybin. So you can, because it was good when Slider did hey, this is the difference between ayahuasca and Iboga. So we'll talk through that. So let's talk through Iboga. Let's talk through your Costa Rica experience. How was, and let me ask, first of all, as a skipper, some debrief points. How was the prep? Were you prepared? Were you underprepared? Can we do anything better next time? And especially with the female angle too.
Knowing what I know now, because the one thing I haven't talked about yet was the curriculum I did with IPI, the Integrated Psychiatric Institute out of Boulder, Colorado. So I now have a certificate in psychedelic assisted therapy that took me 10 months to get.
Awesome.
And,
love it.
And the reason I mentioned that, is because I now have what should be a master's level education in psychedelic assisted therapy. And they show you, they talk through each of the medicines, psilocybin, Iboga, MDMA, blah, blah, blah. They talk about how to do the preparation. They talk about how to do the session. They talk about how to do the integration. And looking back on my experiences, both with MDMA and Iboga, and then psilocybin after that, I have been so impressed with how the folks at Awaken Your Soul and No Fallen Heroes, because Nicole obviously is integral in that process, right? She's the first one I talked to, the first one I did prep with. It was awesome. And I think it was very, very well done. Not only was it professional and clinical, but it was also empathic and kind and appreciative that that trauma shows up in different ways for different people. And you have to let those things unfold. So Nicole is awesome. And I can only imagine that No Fallen Heroes wouldn't be the same without her. But
yeah, good. I want to bring this up at this point. And you can decide where to go and run with it, because when we were looking at doing a documentary a couple of years ago, and it's in work and in progress, it was initially, the kudos to the Hollywood crowd. They're like, hey, Whiz, no offense, you're 5 white dudes. You need a little diversity. I'm like, oh yeah, duh. So I picked up the phone. I don't need to go names or into details, but I called some ladies from the fleet I had served with, and gave them a little bit of a brief. And they said, yeah, Whiz, we'd love to heal our PTSD and our trauma. I'm like, great. Here's what we're doing. They're like, yeah, man, it ain't from combat, bro. It's from rape and sexual assault. And I'm like, holy shit. I didn't even, and they're like, dude, it ain't your fault. I'm like, but oh my God. And they, one of them was like, hey man, no offense. Why don't you guys go? And if you don't die, then give us a call. And that person, hopefully is coming down the road, but you popped up on our radar around that same time because we hadn't, you and Arrow are the first two female fighter crew to sit with the medicine. So it does that come in at all, the sexual assault stuff, in your orbit or anybody's orbit that you know about with these medicines? Because and to be clear, folks, trauma is trauma. I was trauma grading and trauma shaming myself. I'm like, I have trauma. The guys on the ground, the gals on the ground that were getting shot at and heads blown off. And it's like, nah, dude, there are women, there are men who far from the front lines who suffer sexual trauma. And trauma is trauma. In some ways, it's almost worse than combat trauma. You expect to be shot at by your enemy, not your brothers, not your sisters. So can you map that out a little bit, Doc?
Yeah, it is the ultimate betrayal. Like somebody who's supposed to have your back is now a perpetrator of the most intense violence you can imagine. And because nobody believes you, there's nothing you can do about it. And this person might be in your command and you have to see them every day. So you get re-traumatized and re-triggered every day.
Wow.
When I was in Hawaii, I was the OIC of a small detachment that worked for Pac Fleet. And I remember I'll never forget this kid. Mid-20s, big strapping dude. He's tall, 6'3", 6'4", grew up playing hockey in Michigan. And we were having a lot of trouble with him. We couldn't figure out. He's really amazing sailor, but just started to have all kinds of problems. And we're like, WTF, man, what's wrong with you? And he finally came clean that he had been raped with a broom handle by 3 guys on his ship like a couple of years before. And we had been trying to send him back out to sea. And the thought of going back out to sea had re-triggered his post-traumatic stress. And I'm telling you, there is nothing that will tear your heart out more than watching a big, vital, strong man, a puddle of tears and anger and shame in your office, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Jesus God.
And I've carried that, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. We got him help, and I think he ended up being able to work through his thing. But how brave of him to sit in my office and share that with me. Most people don't. Most of these things go unreported. And the other thing about MST is how many men are assaulted. And because of this whole warrior ethos and the shame associated, men simply don't report
talk about it.
And don't talk about it. Like, who is going to want to talk about the fact that somebody attacked him, out back of, Camp Airshon or whatever, ripped their pants off and shoved a broom handle. It's just not in our thought process that these things even happen, and they do frequently. So it's a very important part of the work I do now. I'm involved in a couple of nonprofits and volunteer groups that provide resources and educate specifically for women who are survivors of sexual assault, just because it's so prevalent and nobody's doing anything. Like, oh my God, why is nobody doing anything? Yeah. But I think the VA is so overwhelmed with everything that it just falls into the, oh my God, it's too much category.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's almost overwhelming. Wow. So, okay. So you, Arrow, down in Costa Rica for Iboga. Let's talk through your medicine experience with the grandmother or the granddad Iboga.
So I have a couple of different ways I like to describe Iboga. And I don't know if I've shared this one with you. I've shared it to a number of people, but if MDMA is the cupcake appetizer, right? Iboga is a big giant shit sandwich. That's the main course, and there's no mayonnaise or ketchup. That's
ain't no hot sauce.
Taste better. It was the worst tasting stuff I have, and as an herbalist, I deal with things that don't taste good. That's medicine can be bitter. This was the bitterest, most foul stuff. And because it's not done in a capsule or an injection, when you do it in Costa Rica, you're doing the medicine the way it's meant to be done.
Sawdust. It's like you're eating the root. You're eating the root bark, folks, in Iboga. Yeah.
And I'm not going to bore your readers with the whole chew or no chew thing. I know that you've discussed that.
I think you started that. You were the troublemaker. You were the flight lead. And we just followed your lead stupidly, man.
Well, just because I have a couple of degrees doesn't mean I'm a genius. So we'll just put that out there. And I am a Tomcat guy. We are kind of knuckle draggers.
True.
But I decided to chew it because, like, I'm an overperformer and I'm going to get the most out of this medicine. And I've come all this way and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
By the time my tongue turned numb, I'm like, I'm questioning the thought process behind what it is I'm doing.
Too late.
And and as a result, it hit me like a Mack truck. I didn't even realize it hit me so hard and fast. I didn't realize it was in the medicine, but I was in the medicine.
Yeah. You got up and bugged out, man. You're like, I'm going to lay down. I'm like, whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I spent some time this morning rereading my journal from that experience, and it just cemented how physically challenging Iboga is. The nausea, the jittery. It's like you have a hangover and you're still buzzed, but there's zero euphoria. It's like opposite of euphoria. And you can't turn it off once you're in the medicine.
The only way through
you gotta ride it out.
Yeah, is through it. Yeah. You can't untake the medicine. Yeah.
I think this is a good medicine for people like us that are looking for something really strong and an intense experience, but I don't recommend it for people just going in for the first time. Like, try something else, psilocybin. But as somebody who has done really hard things, I've done a bunch of deployments, and I've lived in the Middle East for a year. That was fun. And I've done a bunch of Ironman. I've got all those experiences of hard things. So I'm like, yeah, let's do this hard thing. And so once I finally had that mindset click in, like, stop whining and get the most out of it, things change quite a bit. And it's almost like you have to learn how to navigate the medicine in order to get the most out of it. So and the visions and the riding through blood vessels on along with the other red blood vessels and all the crazy stuff that you get. Once I got that out of the way and started my actual journey, it was amazing. I had this, someday I will draw a full-sized drawing of what I experienced, but I had this vision of me going down into hell all by myself, armed with nothing but a bow and arrow to go get all the lost parts of me. And if you think about how intense that is, like, wow, that is some powerful medicine.
Holy crap.
And I wasn't going to hell. I was just going down in my own psyche, but it feels like hell when you're in that situation. You feel like, okay, we're going to go in. But I find it ironic that I was armed with a bow and arrow. Like, what am I going to do with a bow and arrow? But there it is. I don't know.
No 2,000-pound JDAMs or anything. It's Rosie and her bow and arrows.
Bow and arrow, which I guess if you think about it from a tribal aspect or an esoteric aspect, you're not going to bring these other things. You're going to bring the simplest of tools. It's like the minimum effective dose. What tool are you going to need to get in there and get out with all the things you need in life, right? So
or maybe that was the medicine telling you actually don't need anything big to do this work. You got you. Yeah, this is all you need.
I did. Yeah. So the long and the short of it is I went down into my psyche and I brought back all the broken parts of myself, starting from when I was in the womb. Because I think that it's that generational inherited trauma that is part of the picture. Yeah. All the different parts of me, so that by the end of the peak experience of the journey, I had, 52 of me. Some of them were carrying the infants, and somebody's got the 7-year-old by the hand going, let's go. And we're all in a line like Braveheart's army, charging, just in this victorious collection of we've gathered all the parts of ourselves, and we are now one again.
Wow.
And there's much more to it, but the takeaway from it was you can't go forward in a life that is grounded in, what's the word I'm looking for? Peace, or maybe peace is good enough for now, without having all your parts there and being good with all the parts that are there. Along the way, I purged, if you recall.
I heard it.
that was a big part of it. And not everybody who does Iboga or Ibogaine purges, but it was part of what I had to purge. And it took me 2 hours to finally just get to the point where I was going to, like, okay, if I don't get rid of it, it's never, like, I'm just going to sit here and be sick. So I got up, and it took me about 20, 30 minutes, and I finally vomited harder than I had ever vomited in my entire life. Like, it was a full body from the bottom of my toes vomit. And as you know, that a lot of aviators are heavy drinkers, and I've had my share of fun in the past, and I've purged in the past, but it was nothing. This was way different. And it was like that scene from, what's that movie? Oh, The Green Mile, where the guy blows the gray. When I vomited, that nothing came out. We hadn't eaten since 2:00 in the afternoon. I had a completely empty stomach. The medicine wasn't even in there anymore. It was already working its way through my system. So it was like an energetic vomit of this gray crap. I felt so much better. I was able to finally crawl back into my cocoon and finish out the journey. But as you know, we were in the medicine for at least 12 hours, like well into the next day. And I don't think I felt normal again until probably 6 in the evening the next day. But the cool thing is, as soon as I felt normal, it was just like, oh my God, I feel amazing.
You looked like a different person at dinner, and then definitely the next day, the day after the gray day, your eyes were blue or clear, and you just looked like a lighter human being, brighter.
Yeah, well, when you let go of that much stuff, I did a lot of purging that night, just emotionally, vomiting and all the things, and I had more to go, and I've done more purging. Emotionally, I don't throw up when I do psilocybin, thank goodness. But it's part of the process. But until you at least open up to that first, it's almost like you got to bust the seal. And that first purge from Iboga was enough to get the doorways open for my psyche that I would need in future journeys to continue letting go of things that aren't serving me and allow new things to come in.
I love that. It kind of, people call it grandma or grandfather Iboga. The analogy I tend to use is psilocybin, MDMA, ayahuasca, mom and dad, they love you, but Iboga's grandma or granddad, they definitely love you, but they can kick the shit out of you if they want, in a loving way. So we took a day and a half to kind of integrate, get our minds right. How was the second time you sat with the medicine?
I didn't want to do the second session.
You and Susie. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was like, man,
I'm good.
I'm good, but we're not good. There's always more to unpack. And I figured if you guys were going to invest, if you believed in me enough to invest in sending me down there, I believed in me enough to invest in sending me down there, that I needed to step into the medicine a second time. And so I did.
We didn't chew this time, folks. We swallowed.
No chewing. We swallowed plenty of water. And as a result, the journey overall was much more gentle. Although that's like comparing, instead of stabbing myself in the foot, I'm just going to drop an axe on my foot. So
it's all relative.
All relative. But it was a really cool journey. And, they say you can ask the medicine for things. And so I did. I said, you know what? I need a break. I can't do that again. It's too much for my system. If I had done this when I was 25, this might be a different story, but I'm 52 now, and I need to
throttle back.
Right. So, bingo profile, right? Just to make sure we don't crash and burn.
Exactly.
So I asked the medicine, I need you to take it. I'm in, but I need you to do this a little bit differently in this journey. And they did. So I still got the visions. I still got all the things, but, and instead of having a very active journey where I was on a vision quest, it was much more passive. And they ended up, I kept having this scene of looking up into a light and seeing heads. And I'm like, it took me a while. Like, it took me a couple hours. I'm like, am I in a grave? And I'm looking up at people who are burying me, but there's no dirt. Nobody's throwing dirt on me. So I'm not dead yet. And I finally figured it out. I was on a surgery table. And I was communicating with the surgeons. Like, I'm such an unevolved life form that I couldn't talk directly to the surgeon. I had to talk through a higher version of myself. So I had this conversation with the surgeons through a higher version of myself about what they were doing. Because I'm a doctor, I can't separate my curiosity. Like, I want to know what's going on. And they're like, no, you don't. I'm like, did you not just hear me? Like,
yeah, I do.
Yeah. I want to know what's going on. I'm curious. You're working on my body. I want to know what you're doing. And so they spent a lot of time working on my heart. There was something wrong with the timing system. We had this sinoatrial node that keeps the pace of our heart. And I don't know on what level of, the etheric body or astral body or what they were working on, but they were working on my heart, the timing system. And I was like, that is just super cool. And then they worked on my hips for a while. They worked on my right foot for a while. And then they ended with, I'm like, oh, you done? They're like, no, we got one more thing. And we're going to do brain surgery on you. I'm like, ooh.
Oh boy.
What? Yeah. And then I felt, it was just like I was sitting there and I felt fingers pushing on my skull, one on each side. And they had done something or hooked something up. I'm like, what are you working on? Neurotransmitters. Like, okay, so what? Like, there are a lot of neurotransmitters. This is the egoic me going, I know a lot about neurotransmitters. Yeah. Tell me what you're doing. And they said, we're working on your dopamine. And I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. Because at the time, I still, even though I have a medical education, I still haven't peeled back all the layers of what dopamine is and how it's associated with the reward. And low dopamine is associated with depression. Low dopamine is associated with Parkinson's. And so it was a really interesting data point that I have taken with me ever since in learning about how dopamine impacts, because we spend so much time looking at serotonin.
Yeah.
Dopamine is just as important, particularly if you are an adrenaline junkie where you keep doing things to keep the dopamine high, which is, I think I fall on that. And then low dopamine, which is where people who are severely depressed and unmotivated have an issue with that, but also the whole Parkinson's thing. And I had finally put together that I have a lot of Parkinson's-like symptoms. And if I'm going to keep from getting Parkinson's down the road, I need to make some serious changes in my life. So that was a really important message for me to get. And here's a really cool thing. After I was done with that journey, on my way home, I chain smoked my way through a couple of books. I didn't read anything on Iboga beforehand. I didn't want to bias myself. But I found out afterwards that they are researching Iboga for Parkinson's. And
wow,
blew my mind. I'm on the airplane reading this book going, oh my God, that's amazing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So they did some energetic surgery as a part of that, but I also got another journey where instead of this time collecting all the broken pieces of myself, I was getting a glimpse at where I was in alternate universes. Like, this is me in this life. Where would I be? Because I think we all wonder what would have happened if I made this choice or this choice.
Yeah, of course.
It's just natural, right?
Yeah.
And so I connected very strongly with the me that decided to go to Ohio State University and go back home to my hometown in Ohio and become a chemistry teacher, which I love chemistry. I was a chemistry undergrad. I do a lot of chemistry now. I mean, that's what nutrition and herbal medicine is. It's chemistry. And I tuned into that. And this version of me was intensely happy and at peace. And that was a really important thing to see because I've been so wrapped up in, I made the wrong decision here, or I made the wrong decision here. There are no wrong decisions. Like you said, thank God for unanswered prayers because everything, like where I've ended up is perfect. We've made mistakes. Well, if we won't make mistakes, we have lots of learning points. So I've done a lot of learning in my life.
Yeah.
but it was cool to see and I saw many, like I saw the chemistry teacher. I saw the rich person that pulled up in a limo, getting out, wearing a $3,000 suit.
Wow.
I saw the me that was homeless pushing a grocery cart. I saw the energy of me that showed up as a soul because I had committed suicide and I didn't make it. So like all the experiences showed up. And at the very end, we're all looking at each other going, well done. Like, even if you didn't make it, you still, you showed up and you made it.
Yeah.
And the coolest part about that journey was at the very end, all the me's looked at this me and they acknowledged this me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And said, you have done a great job. Stop beating yourself up. Like,
oh, wow.
And when I talk about it, sometimes I almost come to tears.
Sure.
If you look at that from a psychological aspect, it is the most potent form of self-approval that I have ever been able to give myself. And I that's just irreplaceable. So those two experiences, gathering the broken pieces and then being able to have disparate parts of me or whatever look and say, you've done a great job and keep going. Like keep up the good work.
Yeah.
I've been able to take those experiences and completely change the way I approach medicine with the folks I'm working with now. So in the end, the short version is I ended up leaving my job at my residency a little bit earlier than I anticipated, moved out here to Port Townsend, and have started a completely different practice than I ever thought I would. But the medicine is the reason for that. Yeah. So the medicine called me, and it just didn't call me. It called me to be part of, and it happens to a lot of people. You get like you.
Yeah.
You didn't just do the medicine. You want to be part of the community that brings it to people in a way that's responsible and ethical and sustainable. And that's where I am right now. It's a good place to be. I still have struggles. Sure. I'm still working with a therapist. I'm still doing lots of things to, ups and downs, but compared to what I was on, that July day in the ER room, looking at, my life before my eyes, wondering what the fuck I was doing, boy, night and day. And I owe a lot of it to the mentors in my life that have introduced me to medicine, No Fallen Heroes, and the folks at Awaken Your Soul. Yeah. And then the awakening of the Western society, where people are finally open to this stuff. Yes. It's amazing in our time that we're here.
That's incredible, Rosie. I mean, that brings a tear to my eye. Wow. Let's talk through integration. Because as you know, if you don't integrate, this could be ugly. How did it go with Hillary? How is your integration? And why is it important? Highs, lows, everything.
I appreciate you mentioning Hillary because I won't say too much about her. Her life is private, but I will say that her support in doing this medicine has been key to me being able to continue doing it. When I told her I was going to Costa Rica, it was on a moment's notice, and I said, "Hey, babe,
oh boy,
I know we have a little mini vacation planned. We were supposed to go cross country skiing and snowshoeing up in the Olympic Mountains." Uh-huh. And she said, you go, this is what you need to do, then you go. And then ever since then, she's been super supportive. And like the trip I made to Miami or down to Fort Lauderdale, she's like, you have to go, you go and do your thing. And I without the support of somebody who, number one, understands the need to be independent and do what's right for yourself and do it within the context of psychedelic medicine is really important.
That's a keeper. Rosie.
Yeah, she's obviously. She's awesome.
Good.
Very, very grateful. I love her very much.
Can real quick, any pre-flight prep we could have done better for her? Any other, or what advice would you give to significant others who are kind of left behind? Because there is some worry. Can we do anything better, or was she kind of prepared?
I think she was quite pleased that she was included in the process. Just having those phone calls with Nicole and being able to communicate with Nicole while we're down in Costa Rica, because we all, as you've told folks, we give away our devices, which is awesome. But people want to know, are you
alive?
The devil?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you alive?
Yeah. Did they steal your kidneys or?
right? Leave you on the street for dead. And the next thing you know, we're going to hear about you on CNN
Exactly.
and another casualty.
Yes.
But Nicole was awesome about communicating and letting all the families know that we were safe.
Okay, good.
And it's something that in the work I do here in Port Townsend, as far as harm reduction and education, I always open it up to partners when I'm talking to people about, because we can get into this in a little bit. Port Townsend is one of the areas in the country like Ann Arbor and Oakland and Seattle where psilocybin is decriminalized, so people use. And
Good.
part of my business isn't helping them use, it's helping them do so if they want to, and it's their God-given right to use plant medicine, do it safely in a way that reduces harm. Because the last thing we need is somebody having a bad trip. And I have enough experience that I can talk through them through how to do that. I always open it up to their partners. If your partner wants to talk to me about what it is you're doing, or your partner's doing this too, let's get together and have a conversation so that one person isn't on the outside going, my partner is just going off the deep end and wants to do psychedelics with a bunch of hippies out in the forest. And what's that about? So it's important to make sure that the person that you're with is on board for the big win.
Amen.
There's a lot of changes that come from doing psychedelic medicine can be so large that relationships either come together closer or they completely separate. So it's good to know where that might be before you go in. Or you can affect that before you go in by having the right education and the right conversation in the preparation phase. But you guys, and Awaken Your Soul, like Maya was my counselor, and I loved her.
She's
we
awesome.
worked together for the full 10 sessions, and she was very adamant about, hey, schedule a follow-up with me. Okay.
Good. Stay on
but
it.
Like you said, there is no medicine without integration.
Otherwise, it was just an experience. And it's interesting because when I did Iboga for the first time at the Mission Within, their manual, I'd read a page or two and I'm like, hey, all right, man, I think I'm a little comfortable. I get what's going on. And then they'd have like that NATOPS warning, like warning, nothing can prepare you for what you're going to experience. I'm like, holy shit. All right, read a little bit more. I feel better. Another warning. I'm like, wait a minute. But now it makes sense, right? So you can never be fully prepared for this, but you can be prepared for this. So, all right. So how was integration? Ups, downs, highs, lows?
There's been a lot of ups and downs.
Which is, and as she's getting ready to tell us, I want you to understand that, folks, because this isn't the whole, it's a Band-Aid, a quick fix. And, no, man, this is why we call it work. You got to put in the work. And if you don't put in the work, bad things can happen. Even putting in the work, bad things can happen. Or I'm not going to say bad, but, just lows.
Well, it's challenging. And what it's helped me do is navigate those challenging experiences. And they're having the results that they're getting with MDMA with the PTSD trials have been really amazing.
Insane.
But I guarantee you it's not a one and done type thing.
Correct.
What the MDMA is doing is helping hold on just a second.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Sorry about that. I should have turned my phone off. What the MDMA is doing is bringing them back off the precipice and getting them stable so that they can do the real therapy work. And when I say therapy, I'm not talking just talk therapy. I'm talking EMDR, acupuncture, brain spotting, safe sound protocol, somatic experiencing, like all the therapeutic type of psychological work that's out there. EFT, tapping, that's another one. So the medicine helps stabilize and get you away from the brink where you don't want to commit suicide anymore. And then you've got to continue doing the work. And sometimes that means another medicine session. Sometimes that means doing more intensive integration, making big changes in life, navigating those changes, and then letting the dust settle a little bit and see, once you peel back the layer of the onion, what's left. Yeah. And I think a lot of times what happens is we deal with one trauma and then we realize, oh my God, there was like 6 more. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to work on this one. Okay, I'll work on you next, and then I'll work on you next. And it's a process. And like I said, I still have up days and down days, but I'm able to navigate them much more, we'll just say gracefully.
Yeah.
by having done the medicine than if I would have before. And I drink less, and I behave in less desperate ways, and I don't want to end it all anymore. And these are really important things that have come out of the medicine.
Yeah. And I love the way you said that, because kind of old me or you on those down days could spiral. It's almost like I'm in it, but I know I'm in it. I have situational awareness of a low, as opposed to I'm in it, man. As I could be out of it and be like, dude, you're in it. You're going to get out of it. You're fine. To quote my beautiful bride, Susie, it's fine. It's always fine. Right. So you're right. I think it dampens out, instead of extreme highs and lows. We can ride a nice stable, right down the fairway.
And from a nervous system perspective, because I can't separate the clinical from
put the lab coat on
the Rosie, it's really important to keep doing that work, because we have this window of tolerance. We have the fight or flight, that if we get too activated, we go over the edge. Mm-hmm. And when I think of that, I think of like law enforcement people that end up doing things because they get triggered, so they go over the top. Over the top, yeah. Or you have that bottom window where people just simply freeze. Mm-hmm. And so there's a window in there where we can operate. And the idea is to stay within the window, so we're not getting triggered above and do something stupid. Correct. And we're not completely freezing where we end up in bed for 4 days and can't function as a human being. So, and there's a lot of physiology and physicality that is very, very closely tied into the psychology and esoterics of the human body. Mm-hmm. And you can't just treat one of those. And that's one of the things I love the most about psychedelic medicine. It is very physiological, mm-hmm. and it's so esoteric, and it's so unique in how it works. It's like, I wouldn't say give me more of that in an addictive way. It's give me more of that in a way of, of how can I maintain that connection and peace of mind and groundedness in just my day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. And then just go to the medicine when I really, really need it. I'm glad you said that, because, another one of those medicinisms that I'm like, that sounds dumb, and now I believe it, is you are the medicine. So the more medicine work that I do, the less I actually need. I can almost tune in pretty quick, maybe little to get on the right frequency. But the more medicine work that I do, the actual less I need. And then, of course, our beautiful Nicole will say, duh, you are the medicine. I'm like, I'm starting to understand that, which is good, because now we don't have to go get our ass kicked for 12 to 14 hours and chew some root bark, which it's not high up there on the things to do. That's great. So integration, highs, lows, which is good to hear. And you're putting in the work. I almost, I want to have you back for psilocybin, because I don't want to rush through psilocybin. That's its own thing. But I bring that up because I want to segue to, as part of your integration, do you microdose at all? What's your routine to kind of as part of your medicine world? Yeah, I would love to answer that. But real quick, when we talk about psilocybin, I want to talk about ketamine as well, because I've done a ketamine. Yeah. Oh, good. That's addition. Awesome. Yes. Let's do that. And hopefully by the time we talk again, I'll have done some ayahuasca, but that's a whole nother discussion. Okay. So how do I use this medicine in my daily life? Because I'm in a place where psilocybin is decriminalized, I can grow it and use it for personal use, and local law enforcement will not prosecute. I don't advertise that. That would be silly. And, but it's just like what I do in my own home with my own plant medicine is my business. And I love that approach. Yes. So that's a long way of saying I have ample access to mushrooms, and I almost never do them. I don't even really microdose unless I really think I'm having a bad day. Okay. And that's been over the past year, I've microdosed maybe 5 times. Oh, wow. Okay. And that's it. Because I prefer to use some of these other things. And again, I'm way into herbal medicine. So I use Chinese herbal medicine, Western herbal medicine, even things as simple as like chamomile and lavender can do for your nervous system what microdosing does in a different way. Okay. So I don't feel the need. That's why when I have people tell me like, you're right where the devil wants you. Like, I don't think you quite understand what this stuff is. Like, I have access to use it every day if I want to, and I don't, because I don't need it. Amen. And And the last full psilocybin journey I did was way back in November, and I still don't necessarily feel like I need to step into it. Those things are a lot of work.
Oh my God,
Like,
man.
You've got to
Yes.
do some deep psychological work. And so if you're going to do that type of experience, you really need to make sure that you're set and setting, not just in terms of where you are physically in the room, but where you are in life.
Yes.
That you're ready for that sort of process. So I have it. I don't use it. I don't need it. And when I do, I talk to Hillary and say, hey, let's talk about this. I think it might be time, or, how do you feel about doing this?
Mm-hmm.
So that she knows. And because I don't do this alone, I want to make sure that if I'm going to do a full experience, I have somebody here with me.
Oh yeah.
So that we're doing it safe and we're being responsible. But I know a lot of people do microdose regularly, and it's a lifesaver. I haven't needed it.
Good.
The cool thing is, if I ever do, I have it and I know how to use it. But I think it's kind of cool that I haven't had to, and I think that's the power of the medicine still being in there. I can't wait to tell you about some of my psilocybin journeys where Iboga and psilocybin actually had a conversation in my head, and it was hilarious.
Oh my God. What a great segue. That's going to be our part 2. Let me, a couple minutes we have left. Let me ask you about this, because you're in a very tolerant area, part of our country where you're so, you nailed it. Imagine man and woman making a plant that God put on this earth for us to heal illegal. It's insane. But anyway, how do you deal, even though you're in a pretty cool tolerant area, how do you deal with naysayers? Like you've seen my Instagram stuff, like that was Satan and demons, and that wasn't your sister and stuff. And I'm like, how do you, first of all, do you get any of that stuff? And if you do, how do you handle it?
I don't get a lot of that just because of the area where we live.
Okay,
people are so tolerant. It's a very laissez-faire. It feels very wild, wild west out here. But at the same time, you know what? You don't hear on CNN or Fox News that somebody killed themselves in Port Townsend, from doing psychedelic medicine, because that just doesn't happen.
Correct.
I limit my time on social media as much as possible because I want to have that buffer. I do whatever I can to boost posts and do that sort of thing. And I do the required stuff for, website and Facebook and all that. But I really like to have that buffer because I can't even with that energy. Like if you are so fear-based that you can't even look into the potential, then there's nothing I can do for you. And me engaging with you is only going to activate you even more. Amen. And the last thing I need to do is activate somebody who's already activated. So I don't even go there.
And you probably don't get that in person, right? I mean, let alone social media. You're not getting a lot of people in person that are like, giving you the business.
No, one-on-one in private, I get a lot of curiosity, and that's what I want. If somebody's curious, they might be open to it. And if they are curious, maybe they won't just, turn it off. The one time that I did get a letter from a friend saying that the devil had me right where he wanted me, I didn't even respond. I'm like, well, what can I even do with that? I've had a long talk with you about the power of this medicine and where we are with it. If you can't look on the internet and see what the VA is doing, what MAPS is doing, what the research that is happening, which is exploding, and with all the positive benefits, and still see that this isn't evil, and this, like, I can't help you. So good luck to you. And, if you want to come back and talk to me, that's great. I'm here. If not, I've got things to do. Thanks. Yeah.
I take Nicole's advice, or one of her sentences, I pray you heal. That's maybe the nicest thing you can say to somebody like that, And I've used that a couple times, and then they freak out even more, like, how dare you assume I need healing? I'm like, okay, so you're right. But I was just wondering how, if you had to deal with any of that stuff. Because, old me, man, I'd be in a dogfight and, fangs out. New me is, I actually love those people. I love it. And I see souls now. So, and God doesn't make imperfect things. So I actually can deal with it a little better than old Whiz. Old Whiz wouldn't be in that conversation anyway. Old Whiz might have been saying, yeah, you did interact with the devil. But thankfully that guy died on a bed of a home in Mexico. So, Doc, this has been awesome. I didn't hear a lot of the stuff that you brought up today down in Costa Rica. So this has been, I loved all of that. That is fantastic. So yeah, we're going to have you back because I want your opinion on ketamine, because I sat with it recently and I was a medicine snob. I'm like, and Boom. I love it. So we'll have you back for your ketamine debrief and also psilocybin, because I want to hear about that. And that's good, because as a flight instructor, you're getting your quals across the board, so you can speak to it. That's why I did the ketamine as well, so I can start speaking to these things. The only one I'm with you now. The only one I haven't done yet is ayahuasca, and I don't know, Doc. I'm going to steal Susie's sentence because she's looked into it a little bit. She's like, when they build in on the flight schedule purging for like a half an hour, she's like, I'm good.
Right.
And she's like, I heard it might be full, phi beta epsilon, full body explosions. And so I don't know. You might take the flight lead on that, and you might, lead on the ayahuasca. How about that? And then you can debrief it.
Will do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't wait to talk to you again. There's so much going on in the veteran space and what we're doing out here for decriminalizing in Washington State.
Good.
There's so much happening. Yeah, that I can't wait to share with you some more.
Awesome. All right, folks, that's Dr. Kristin Rosie Barnes, badass Tomcat and doctor, and putting the ladder down to help save and change lives. Thanks for everything you're doing, Doc. She's our chief medical officer at the No Fallen Heroes Foundation and a best friend. So I love you. Thanks for coming on, and we're gonna have you back in a little bit.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, folks, make sure you check out the No Fallen Heroes Instagram page, even though we just badmouth social media. NoFallenHeroes.com. You can check out our YouTube page for more content, and we'll see you next time. We're going to have Rosie back for part 2. Have a great rest of your day. Happy hunting. Make sure you're hedged. Fights on. Namaste. And basi, yow, yow. Whiz out.